Hello, my name is Ray, and I'd like to continue the theme of the big picture. There's a story about a nurse, and she worked for about 25 years, both caring for people who were very, very ill. She worked in the hospital, then she went to a hospice, but she was so moved by what these people were saying, the thoughts that they were sharing, that she kept a diary. And with the diary she wrote all these feelings that these people expressed. Later on then, when she finished working, she actually published a book on the 5 top regrets that people have about life. And I'm just going to mention them. And the first one, just looking here, the first one is, I wish I had the courage to live a life that I wanted to live and not what other people wanted to live. I think that's a very important one. The second one was, I wish I hadn't worked so hard. This was mainly for men, because they had been out of work all day and didn't have time enough for their families. The third one was, I wish I had kept in touch with my friends. You know, that over the years I hadn't done that, and I let people go who were in fact my dear friends. And they mentioned that one. And I wish I had the courage to express my feelings. That's the fourth one. I kept everything locked up and bound up. I wish I had time to express my feelings. And the final thing, which I think is the most telling, is I wish I had the courage to let myself be happier. I wish I had the courage to let myself be happier. And I think that's very telling for most of us. And certainly it was telling for me for many years, because why are people unhappy? Why have these people come to the end of their lives really not allowing themselves to be happy? What had happened in their lives? And so I want to talk to you today a little bit about the ego. The ego sometimes gets a bad press, but the ego is because the ego, for instance, gets you out of bed in the morning to go to work, take the children to school, make the meals, drive the car. The ego does that. But the other side of the ego, it does live on people's fears and insecurities. And I keep saying to people, when they're talking to me, I said, we all hear voices in our head. And they're the same voices that we hear. I could tell you now what probably you have experienced in your life, because I've experienced every life, and my other friends have experienced it during their life too. That in fact the same voices are the same, and they come under several little kind of headings, which I'm going to say a few of them at the moment. And it's all to do with identification. How do we identify ourselves? Or what do we identify ourselves? And the first one of these is in fact where people identify themselves with what they have. My possessions only. I have a car, I have a house, I have children even. So they identify with their possessions. And that's it's very, very, very common. So when the possessions go, their world collapses. The second one is that they identify themselves by the achievements they do. By what they're doing. I'm a teacher, I'm a doctor, I'm a plumber, I'm a care assistant, you see. So they identify them by what they do. And that, of course, can come to an end, because anything could stop, illness could stop you doing that, That could go out of you, lose your job. And then what does your world collapse? The third one is, and this is so kind of common, is what other people think of me. My goodness me, I can't do that, I'm not allowed to do that, I'm not allowed to be kind of act in a certain way. I've got to act as the rest of society acts it. Sometimes you can see in adolescent life, this is very, very prominent. I've got to be part of the group. But then the group goes, or you move on, and what happens? Your little world collapses. So I think that is a very, very important one. I think the other one, which is so common, is actually the little voice in their head saying, I am not good enough. I'm not good enough to play sport, I can't draw, I can't go out with this girl or this boy, I can't do anything like that because I'm not worthy enough, as it were. I'm not worthy enough. So these are some of the things that are happening in people's lives, and the ego is taken over many, many people's lives, and in fact they act under the ego. How do I know that? Because I think, look at just our culture and the way our culture's gone. There's a lot of upheaval in our culture going on because most people are at conflict within themselves. And I really want to stress this. The conflict within ourselves is causing the conflict out there, as it were. So unless we kind of sort this out, we can blame everybody else for causing the wars or causing the strife going on or collapsing of firms or it's conflict within myself. Am I dealing with the conflict which the ego is presenting all the time? Conflicts about I'm not good enough, conflicts about my possessions, conflicts about what people think of me. Am I doing anything about it? Because if we don't do anything about it, it will continue just to grow, and our society itself will collapse into a kind of disorder. But there is a way out. I want to read a poem for you which kind of explains it, because it's very hard to explain, and as you can see, I'm not speaking very well. It's very, very hard to explain what the way out is. The whole thing is to do with awareness. Awareness. Being aware of these things happening, of who you are, what you're doing, and being aware and standing back from the ego. As I shall say in my next video, once you stand back, you can observe it. And you just observe what is happening. And you're really saying, I am not part of this. I am not part of this. But the poem I like to read was written actually about 1200 years ago. It's amazing. It's called Awareness. The poem is called Awareness. I'm just going to read part of it because it's quite long. Yesterday I lived bewildered in illusion, but now I am awake, flawless and serene beyond the world. From my light the body and the world arise, so all things are mine or nothing is. Now I have given up the body and the world, I have a special gift. I see the infinite self. As a wave seething and foaming is only water, so all creation streaming out of the self is only the self. Like the sugar in the juice of the sugar cane, I am the sweetness in everything I have made. When the self is unknown, the world arises, but you mistake the rope for the snake. My nature is light, nothing but light, and when the world arises, I alone am shining. When the world arises in me, it is just an illusion, the water shimmering in the sun. But from me the world streams out, and in me it dissolves, as a bracelet melts into gold, or a pot crumbles into clay, a wave subsides into water. I adore myself, how wonderful I am. I can never die.